Joining me now is New Orleans Congressman Cedric Richmond. First of all, thank you for being with us tonight.
Well, thank you for having me, Al.
Congressman, I want to talk about issues of inequality, but first, what are your feelings 10 years after Katrina?
Well, we're certainly not where we were after the storm, but we're not where we want to be either. We still have some hard work to do. The lower Ninth Ward is still incomplete, so to say, and we still have far too many people around the country that want to come home that are not home, and we need to make a way to get them home, and then the people that are here who are not whole, we need to figure out a way to make them whole. So it's a good point 10 years later to stop and take an assessment of where we are, but then we now have to go and double down on our work to make sure we get to where we want to be.
President Obama talked about issues of structural inequality before and after the storm. What's your take on that?
Well, the president's absolutely right. Right now in New Orleans, we have 52% unemployment in terms of African-American males, and then you have African-American households earning half that of their white counterparts. And so when you see things like that, you know that there's a problem, and you have to dedicate the resources and the commitment to fix that. And I don't think that that's a problem unique to New Orleans. I think that that's a problem that we see all across the United States, but we have to talk about it in order to fix it, and we have to have the will to do the things necessary to fix it.
You know, some of the issues of inequality that still impact New Orleans is, you referred to some of them, African Americans make up 59% of the city's population, but 90% of the local prison population. And on unemployment, 52% of working-age black males are either unemployed or out of the workforce. What's the way forward here? How do we address these issues? These are real issues.
Well, two things come to mind very quickly. We have to complete the job of criminal justice reform. The war on drugs, we now know, was the wrong way to go. And we now have to make sure that we have a smart criminal justice policy. The second thing that we have to do is make sure that we get everyone to adopt the concept of ban the box. When people come home, formerly incarcerated individuals, we have to make sure that they have an opportunity to live a law-abiding life, but also be able to provide for their families. And right now, we don't do that. And then another thing we can do is to stress disadvantaged business programs and make sure that small minority businesses get shots to develop and prosper and grow into bigger businesses, because we know that they're the ones that take chances on hiring African-American males who may have been incarcerated, African-American males who may not have all of the education that they need, but we know that these businesses would take those chances. So those three steps, I think, are probably a good first start. But overall, we just have to have the commitment to address the problem.
I remember right after Katrina, many of us came down. I was part of leading marches and all, because, as the president referred to, government failure. And the levees breaking showed a lot of the infrastructure disrepair in the country that still exists all over the country. You and your colleagues have tried to get your colleagues across the aisle to deal with infrastructure. What do you think? Will, in memory of what happened 10 years ago, do you think after your Congress reconvenes, we can see something about infrastructure happen in this country? All over the country, bridges, tunnels, highways, still in disrepair. We could have other kinds of Katrinas.
You're absolutely right. And I think the only way it's going to happen in the short term is if the American people start changing the conversation and stop talking so much about what we're spending, as opposed to talk about what return we get on the investment of what we spend. So we know that investing in our country's infrastructure, which has to be done, gives us a greater return on our investment. And you can take that, create jobs, spur the economy, and then you can take that money and pay down the national debt and reduce the deficit and those things. But right now, we should invest in our infrastructure because of all the things I mentioned before, and we have to do it. So, Al, you being a homeowner, you would know when you have a leak in your roof, you can fix that leak for a certain dollar amount. But if you leave it leaking for a year, so you're going to have to change sheetrock, deal with mold, and all of those things. And that's the position that the country's in right now. We can fix the problems we have right now for a certain amount, but if we don't, the deferred maintenance costs are going to be tremendous in years to come. So we just need to change the rhetoric that we hear about spending and mortgaging our children's future. We need to spend money on things that give us a return, like infrastructure, like early childhood education, like criminal justice reform, and all of those things. So, but the American people have to demand it. And if we just continue to allow them to use talking heads and do sound bites and just talk about spending, then we're not going to get to where we need to be.
New Orleans Congressman Cedric Richmond, thank you so much for your time as we remember this important event.